Coach, can you talk about what you've seen from that Wolf linebacker room and just comment on young players like a Justice Hill or older player like a Jamarian Lathan? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that that room, Christian Robinson does a great job with those guys. The details. It's a really versatile position. Takes a number of different things that, from a pass rush standpoint, from a run fit standpoint, and then we ask those guys to do a lot of things from a coverage aspect as well. And I think, when you have some older guys that are now more comfortable in year two in this defense, they're able to start playing the game with a little more anticipation, with some offensive recognition, and then obviously that leads to production.
How close to 100% is Keon Sabb at this point? What sort of
Yeah,
experiences have
yeah,
you come from that?
Keon's doing a really good job. He is really pushed. Our training staff's done a great job with him. I think he's ahead of really every marker that we had in the offseason for him, and we weren't sure if he was going to be able to go to the level that he's going right now at the beginning of fall camp, and but he is, and he's here. I don't know if I could put a number on it exactly, but I mean he's out there playing with our guys, and so he's comfortable enough to be able to do that. Sometimes those injuries, right, you just got to build a callus, right, of coming back, and I think that's something that he's really pushing himself right now to get ready for the season.
What do you want to see from the Husky position this game?
Yeah. Well, obviously, you got a couple of guys over there that are fighting and battling right now. I think our depth in the secondary, which is a lot better than where it was a year ago, allows us to try a number of different guys out there. That is a very versatile position. Similar to. It's similar to the Wolf in all the things that we ask that position to do, and yet at the same time very different. But that guy's got to be able to fit the run. He's got to be able to play man. He's got to be able to play zone coverage and blitz off the edge and all that stuff. So, consistent execution is critical. That player can really eliminate part of the field if they do their job in terms of perimeter blocking and teams that try to throw perimeter screens out there. If you got a Husky that can take take the field space away. I think we've got a number of guys that seem to be doing a really good job right now. So pleased with where those guys are going, and I really like the competition in the room.
Saw Cam Calhoun a little bit out there. I mean, what's kind of the, I guess, knowledge difference in terms of taking an outside corner?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are similarities to an outside corner and a Husky, a nickel, and yet at the same time, when you're playing in that slot portion of the field, it really is a different position. And so fundamentally, there's a lot of carryover, but schematically, there's a lot of difference in what we're asking him to do. And there were things that we started Cam on this, really towards the end of spring, and then got him involved in the summertime. And then those guys have done a really good job. Mo and Jason Jones kind of working him back and forth in both rooms so that he is available to play at corner and also at the nickel position. But like what I see from him so far.
How many defensive backs would you like to maybe have in rotation this season, just because you've obviously shown a willingness to use multiple?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm not trying to skirt it, but I'll use as many that are ready to go. That we trust, and I think. If you think about the scope of trust, it is, okay, if these are the top 5 players in our defense from a defensive back standpoint, who can play to the same level that starter can, right? And if that backup guy can play to the same level that the starter can, then he deserves to be on the field. And so I think, we've got positions where I think we have multiple starters, for maybe one position, or guys that we will rotate consistently. I don't know if I could put a number on it right now, but a year ago, going into the Tennessee game when we had 5 guys that went down, we only played 6 guys for 5 positions, primarily when it mattered, and I think we could play significantly more than that.
With the younger guys that you maybe haven't seen in pads as much, how much can your perception of them change starting tomorrow when y'all get live contact as opposed to just working in shells?
Yeah, well, Anytime we go live, we tell our guys all the time, right? Live work is the closest thing we can do to simulate a game-like scenario to you, right? And so I put a premium on that, right? How they play, how they respond, how they produce in that moment, I think is the closest indicator we can give them to what they're going to do on game day. And so, you see it all the time, right? Freshmen win jobs, they win responsibilities, they win playing time through fall camp. And then, some guys, right, they continue to maybe be on a path that they're not ready to go the first game. But as we go through the season, right, they're going to be, ready to do more and more as we go. Jeremiah Beeman was a great example of that last year. He really, didn't play for us at all at the beginning of the season, and then in the bowl game he had a significant role for us. So you just try to keep those guys pushing one day at a time, and you can't hold them to the same standard that you would, maybe Deontay Lawson or Tim Keenan.
What are the challenges of scouting an opponent like Florida State when there's so much new coaching staff and roster-wise?
Yeah, when you have a team, when you're preparing for an offensive coordinator that just took over a job, maybe a new quarterback, some new personnel things, you try to gather a whole picture, right? What did the quarterback do at his previous institution, right? And how was he used maybe under this staff or that staff, or, what, I've known Gus since I was in the 8th grade. I mean, I played for him, and his the evolution of his offense and the things that he's done. What might he do based off of this personnel? And so, when you're looking at all those things, right, you're trying to kind of gauge what you anticipate they're going to be. And then at the same time, that you've got to have answers if they kind of go down this pathway or they go down that pathway. And so, naturally you're going to carry a pretty heavy catalog of defense, going into a game.
What do you remember about him as an 8th grader?
Well, so I was at Fayetteville High School, and Gus was the head coach at Springdale High School. So you had Fayetteville Purple Dogs and the Springdale Red Dogs, and so we, went up against each other. But my dad and Gus have been really close for years, and so that I kind of knew him through that connection. And then he coached me he was our offensive coordinator at Arkansas my sophomore year there. Well, Gus is relentless in the details. He does a really great job. From just constantly, holding people accountable to the details. He had great teams at Springdale High School when he was the head coach back then. I just remember how disciplined those football teams were and how hard they were to beat, because I really think, those players took on and embodied the personality of their head coach, right? And if you look at his career, I think there's that's a point that you can continue to kind of acknowledge, right? The discipline that his guys play with and the physicality they play with, and then simply the tempo that they play with. They've always done a great job of that.
What do you think about the depth at Bandit behind a guy like LT?
Yeah, I'm excited about some of the guys that are working in that position right now. Obviously, Keon Keeley and Jordan Renaud are getting a bit of the reps there. Both of them, it's fun to watch, right, their evolution and their growth over the last 18 months. I think both of them have taken huge strides and big steps towards being able to contribute for us, and so really excited about what those guys can do. And then you've got, some other guys that just got here in Cavante Henry that wasn't able to go through spring ball, and so looking forward to kind of seeing what he can do as well. And then what's nice, right, is that you have older guys. The Bandit and the Wolf position, they're different in some ways, but there is enough similarity that there's some crossover work, and so we start to kind of do some of those things as well, just so that we can create enough depth, be it a certain personnel package or just making sure that we have the depth to carry through a long season.
How much of a luxury is it where you can float to different positions and not be assigned to a position?
That's something as a coordinator, right? Last year was my first time as really a walk-around coordinator. Chuck Morrell was, didn't necessarily have the title, but was coaching the linebackers last season, and so. it reminds me, right, of my 3 years of being a head coach, right? Because, you're able to kind of, based on what you think you're emphasizing that day in practice, or whether you think there's a certain need or a certain scheme that we're going to really, point out, you can kind of go and kind of hone in on that position, right? Or if there's an issue, right, and somebody needs to get better, you can give that the attention it needs. And so, it's something that I think I would want to do moving forward, right? As a coordinator, I think when you're able to have somebody that is calling plays that can watch and evaluate the players at 30,000 feet and can also hone right into a specific drill that is going to be really important for something you're going to do schematically that week. A lot of versatility that for me as a coach, as opposed to just kind of hunkering down on one position. Thanks, guys. Roll Tide.